Picture this: a remote farmhouse perched on the rugged cliffs of the Isle of Man. The year is 1931. The wind howls through the cracks in the walls, and an ordinary family sits huddled around a flickering oil lamp. Suddenly, from deep within the shadows, a high-pitched, mischievous voice rings out, "I am Jeff, and I am an extra clever mongoose." Was it a prank? A hoax? Or could it be something far stranger? Over the years, Jeff the Talking Mongoose has become one of the most bizarre and captivating mysteries in modern folklore. A spirit? A cryptid? Or just a product of an overactive imagination? Whatever he was, Jeff was anything but ordinary. Welcome to Tales from the Graves, where shadows lurk and whispers echo.
Join us as we delve into the unknown, exploring tales of mystery, horror, and the supernatural.
Be prepared to journey into the darkness, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Jess.
Together, we're the Grave Sisters, and we'll be your guides as we unearth the strange and unusual.
So find your flashlight, grab your shovel, and let's dig in.
The following podcast is rated for mature audiences.
It may contain graphic scenes of violence and explicit language that some may find disturbing.
Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back, our beloved grave diggers, to episode 26.
Yeah!
And boy, do we have a doozy of a story for you today.
When Jessica was telling me about what her topic was today, I looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, you can get a whole episode out of this?"
And I was like, bet it's gonna happen. Skibbity toilet riz. And
The hell? What the actual hell?
I'm sorry, I had to do it. No, but I was like, heck yeah, I can, with all the first-hand accounts and the wacky stories that other people, like witnesses, have encountered. Oh yeah, I can probably squeeze a 30 minutes out of this. And plus, I know that you're gonna have some funny anecdotes, because you're gonna be like, what?
I mean, you right about that. We'll see what happens.
So this, what we have for you today, it's a doozy. But I'm going to go ahead and just give you a little backstory, or set the scene, if I may. You will? Ugh. In the early 1930s, on a windswept patch of the Isle of Man, stood a lonely farmhouse named Dorlish Cashin. This remote home, with its high stone walls and creaking timbers, was nestled near the village of Dalby. It was here that the Irving family, James, Margaret, and their teenage daughter, Voirie, lived a quiet, unremarkable life. That is until their peace was shattered by the arrival of something extraordinary. A talking mongoose who called himself Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
Yes, my name is Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
But it's spelled different, G-E-F, because the small, secluded little farm where the Dorlish Cashin farm was located was on an island called the Isle of Man. It's just off the coast of Ireland. So, and it's just a small little island. The population at the time was just probably about 5,100 people. Not 5,100 people, 51,000 people. The house was a very small 2-story home made of stone with no electricity, no amenities, none of that. But later on, the home had been renovated to have, not really renovated because you don't renovate in the 1930s really, but they had put up some wooden walls layered on the inside for like a type of insulation, if you will. It originally in 1916, that was when James Irving and his wife Margaret moved into their house. They were both respectable people. They were known for being nice and neat and tidy people, actually. without nobody really had a mean thing to say about the people. Eventually, they had a daughter in 1919, and they named her Voirie, which I thought was a really pretty name. But later on, in 1931, it began innocently enough. One autumn evening, I think it was like September, the family sat together in the kitchen, and they heard scratching sounds coming from inside the walls.
Oh, that's awesome.
That brings me back to our childhood. In our bedroom when we were kids, a raccoon had
Fucking raccoon.
We had a raccoon that wandered into our crawl space in our house, and it terrified Jennifer and I, because one night we just heard scratching on our walls. It freaked us out so bad for like weeks. All night long, scratching on our wall. And it was always in this one particular spot. It was like in that corner up by like the heater, right?
Yeah, because that's where it was making its little nest.
Yeah, that's where I was making its nest or something.
little
So
home.
it was really cool because Dad looked it up and figured out a way that what he could do one night is to block every single entrance underneath our house and sprinkle flour, and then every couple minutes go out there and see if he could catch paw prints coming out. And as soon as he saw paw prints leaving underneath the house, he blocked that one entrance off, and we never had any problems from that raccoon ever again. But that scared the crap out of me though. All night long. Shh, shh, shh. Mom, there's a ghost in here.
We got the ghostums.
We thought we had a ghost, but no, turns out it was a freaking raccoon.
Goes to show you, most of the time, it's not paranormal activity. It's just a raccoon.
Some kind of creature. Some
It's
kind
a
of
raccoon
critter
in your walls.
It's a critter. Well, back on this. At first, James Irving dismissed it as like rats or mice, as he should. He tried to see if he can catch some stuff and like sealed up some gaps and laid out maybe some traps or whatever, but the noises continued, so he pretty much just gave up, you know.
He was like, we got them demons, and I guess they're just gonna stay.
Well, the sounds changed though. They became a little bit more deliberate, rhythmic, and almost purposeful. So the scratches turned into taps, and then the taps began to mimic patterns as if like in a response to like the family's movements. And it occurred to James that this creature could possibly be a little bit more intelligent than he originally thought. He somehow, don't ask me how, he somehow managed to train the animal that was living in the walls to mimic not only rhythms that he made, but he could eventually name different animals and birds, and the creature could recall them perfectly without hesitation. So, mainly birds. So, it was weird because he can say, make the sound of a sparrow, and he go, tweet, 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 tweet. Make the sound of a hawk, or whatever creatures live in Ireland. I'm not 100% positive, but
I mean, I think they do have like falcons.
if he could say the name of that creature and the animal living in the walls could make that noise, it's like, okay.
Pretty sure you got demons.
Well, I mean, yeah, it creeped me out, but he finally caught a glimpse, a very short glimpse of the animal, and it was a small animal with a yellowish brown hue and a bushy tail. Later on, Voirie would be not singing nursery rhymes, but like saying nursery rhymes, and the creature could repeat them back to her. And when I say repeated back to her, I mean he literally said them back to her. And yes, it could talk. It said the freaking words. Like you walking around going, "Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey," and then you hear a little high-pitched voice going, "Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey." I mean,
I don't know. Jessica's doing like the voice for this thing, like she does for her D&D character, Little Donald.
Yes, my character on our D&D campaign right now is a Lightfoot halfling, and she's got like a little bit of a Cockney accent, so that's basically where that came from. But anyway...
Okay, this is in Ireland, so wouldn't the mongoose have an Irish accent?
I can't do a really good Irish accent. Okay, that was pretty good. I butchered it. Shut up. Any Hoosier, experts say that it was kind of like teaching a baby to speak. So, I mean, you can talk to a baby over and over and over the time. The child will mimic what you're saying, like saying, mama, mama, mama. You know what I mean? So, with the animal listening to the people speaking all the time, it eventually hadn't expanded enough vocabulary to actually converse with you. So this could quite possibly be the case with the tiny creature that was living in their walls. Turns out the rodent caught on very quickly and proficiently. But one night the noises grew louder, and James, with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity, called out, "Who's there?" And to his astonishment, high-pitched squeaky voice replied, "Me!" Margaret gasped, and Vori clutched at her mother's arm, and they would later recall how, in that moment, their world seemed to tilt into something unreal. So, this is where Jeff pretty much introduces himself to the world. Not to the world, to the family.
My name is Jeff.
I swear to God.
It's a fucking mongoose named Jeff.
It's a mongoose named Jeff. Get over it.
If you could choose your own name, would you call yourself Jeff?
I mean, I might.
I guess if you were a mongoose in Ireland.
Oh.
That seems like a pretty good name.
Yeah.
My name is Jeff.
I'm she. I'm Shaughnessy. Over the next few days, the voice grew bolder. It called itself Jeff, spelled G-E-F, and claimed to be a mongoose, though it added with a mischievous laugh, "I am more than that. I am a ghost in the form of a mongoose." Jeff told the family that he was born in New Delhi on June 7th, 1852, which, that's my birthday, June 7th, okay.
Of 1852?
Not in 1852.
I'm about to be that bitch you old.
Some days I feel it. But he had somehow found his way to the Isle of Man. Fun fact, though, the mongoose is not native to the island, but they were brought over from New Delhi to help control the rabbit population.
Oh.
So that's why they now have mongoose there. But so this means that it would have made Jeff 80 years old. 80 years old. Do you have any idea what the average lifespan of a weasel or a mongoose would be in the wild? Usually about 2 years.
Yeah.
So
Little
80
rodent
years.
babies.
I mean, back then, not a lot of people lived to like 80 years. So, I mean, how in the hell could he possibly be 80 years old? But so when James skeptically asked how that was possible, Jeff retorted, "I'm clever. I can travel where I like." Just because you can travel doesn't mean you're like immortal. Whatever. Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Jeff's personality was as peculiar as his claims. He described himself as a little extra clever mongoose and showed a knack for mimicry, reciting nursery rhymes and mimicking the family's voices. Vori later described him as having a shrill, giggling laugh and a penchant for cheeky comments. Over the following weeks, Jeff's antics became a regular part of life at Dorlish Cashin. He would scurry through the walls, his small form occasionally glimpsed darting from shadow to shadow. James claimed that Jeff was about a foot long with yellowish fur and a bushy tail, though he was rarely ever seen clearly. Jeff's behavior was often mischievous. One day, when Margaret was sweeping the kitchen, he yelled from his hiding place, "Why don't you sweep out under the stove lazy bones. Margaret, though startled, couldn't help but laugh. Another time, when a neighbor visited, Jeff mockingly imitated their voice from behind the wall, causing them to leave in a huff. Jeff had become so comfortable with her that even though he would not really let anyone see him, he did let Margaret put her hand through a hole in the wall, and he let her feel his fur and touch his teeth, where he then kind of nipped at her and drew a little bit of blood on her finger.
Okay.
So, okay. But despite his pranks, Jeff also acted as a protector. Because on one stormy night, he would bark like a dog, basically, to warn the family of approaching visitors. On one occasion, he told James, "A stranger is coming up the road. Be ready." Minutes later, a salesman appeared at the door, drenched from the rain. But his relationship with Voirrey was a little bit different. Among the family, it was Voirrey who seemed to share the closest bond with him. The mongoose often followed her movements, whispering jokes and secrets to her, and Voirrey was a shy, imaginative girl and enjoyed Jeff's company, though she admitted he could sometimes be a little unnerving. "Jeff," she once asked, "why do you stay with us?" "Because I like you a lot," he replied. "You're not like the others. You listen to me." Okay, so he wants to be listened to just as much as she does, I guess. Voirrey later said that Jeff would sometimes sing to her, songs she didn't know but that seemed old, like folk tunes from a distant place. And they really did have a good relationship. I mean, he apparently would follow her around whenever she went out to the field, and he would throw small stones at anyone that would get too close to Voirrey, and they would talk to one another all the time. Of course, he would stay out of sight so that she couldn't really see him, but I guess to each their own, which I would really, really want to see him. If I'm talking to something for that long, I would want to see what they look like. He would even sleep in her room, and she would share her food with him. So I guess whenever she was done eating, she would leave her plate out next to a hole or something like that. And whenever she left the room, he would come out and eat or something. But Jeff's story attracted the attention of paranormal researchers and skeptics alike. Several prominent figures investigated the claims. There's this one guy named Harry Price who was a paranormal investigator. He was British, so he came over from England, and he was known for exploring phenomenon like the Borley Rectory, which would be a really good episode for us to do. And he became intrigued by the tale of Jeff the Talking Mongoose. Although Price had never had a direct encounter with Jeff, his investigation played a crucial role in documenting and scrutinizing the story. So here's an account of Price's involvement with his perspective on the mysterious mongoose. Price first learned about Jeff in the early 1930s through newspaper articles and public fascination with a bizarre case on the Isle of Man. He corresponded with James Irving, the head of the family, to gather more information. Irving described Jeff in detail, providing anecdotes about his mischievous behavior and his uncanny ability to speak, and his self-proclaimed identity as a ghost in the form of a mongoose. Curious but skeptical, Price decided to investigate further. Unable to visit the Isle of Man immediately, he dispatched his colleague R.S. Lambert, which was the editor of The Listener, to visit the Irving family in 1935. Lambert spent time at the farmhouse gathering first-hand impressions and conducting interviews with the family. He, too, did not witness Jeff, but reported that the family seemed genuine in their belief. So in his book, The Haunting of Cashin's Gap, which was co-authored by Lambert in 1936, Price documented his findings about Jeff, and he noted several peculiarities. Price found that the family's accounts were strikingly consistent, even under scrutiny. James Irving was meticulous in his letters describing Jeff's antics in great deal, often recording his purported conversations. But he did have a skeptical hypothesis, so he proposed that several explanations for this phenomenon. So, number one was ventriloquism or trickery. Price speculated that Voirie, the teenage daughter at the time, I think she was either 12 or 13 whenever they investigated, might have been responsible for producing Jeff's voice using ventriloquism. Voirie vehemently denied this, but Price noted that the voice often seemed to emanate from hidden spaces or areas where Voirie was present. He even had a hypothesis about psychological phenomena. Price suggested that the isolation of the Irvings' farmhouse, which they were literally in the middle of nowhere, and there were no neighbors for like a mile to 2 miles in opposite directions, so they like had literally nobody around him. So I understand the isolation thing. So the isolation of the Irvings' farmhouse, combined with the family's boredom and possibly their subconscious desires, might have led to a shared delusion or the projection of Jeff as a poltergeist-like entity.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah. And plus, a teenage daughter, a girl, having her period, that's just fuel for the fire, because, periods get everybody in trouble. Anyway, he thought that it could possibly be a hoax. Although Price didn't accuse the family outright, he left the room for the possibility that Jeff was an elaborate hoax designed to attract attention or alleviate loneliness. But one of the few pieces of quote-unquote evidence that Price could analyze was alleged footprints left by Jeff. James Irving sent him a set of plaster casts, which Price described as crude and inconclusive. The prints didn't match those of any known animal and appeared fabricated, further fueling skepticism. I remember listening to one podcast about it, and they said that it looked like somebody had taken clay and took their fingers and made what they thought a paw would look like and put scratches on it with a stick to make it look more authentic or something. But
really,
yeah, maybe they might have actually just faked the footprint or something, but I don't know. Well, while Price himself never traveled to the Isle of Man, he never did. He always sent a liaison or something. And he never interacted with Jeff. His communication with the Irvings gave him insights into their sincerity and their circumstances. He wrote that James Irving seemed genuinely convinced of Jeff's existence, describing a farmer as a man of reasonable intelligence and not easily given to flights of fancy. However, Price noted that the phenomenon lacked concrete evidence. Despite the family's claims of Jeff's speaking, moving objects, and leaving physical traces, no independent investigator witnessed these events firsthand. In The Haunting of Cashin's Gap, Price and Lambert stopped short of declaring the Jeff case a hoax, but remained unconvinced of its supernatural origins. He concluded, "If Jeff is a hoax, it is an extraordinarily elaborate one, sustained over several years, and involving the entire family. If not, then the explanation lies beyond and known scientific understanding." Despite his skepticism, Price admitted that the story of Jeff had a unique charm and strangeness, one that blurred the lines between folklore, hoax, and genuine mystery. His investigation left the case unresolved, and Jeff remained where he was, perplexing and entertaining enigma. But while Harry Price's encounter with Jeff to correspondence and secondary investigation, his involvement lent the case to a level of some kind of credibility and ensured its preservation to be one of the quirkiest stories that Price has ever achieved. Next one was Nandor Fodor. And yes, his name is Nandor. Like Nandor the Relentless from one of our favorite shows, What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, yeah.
Nandor Fodor, he is a psychologist and parapsychologist. So he's Hungarian born with a deep interest in paranormal phenomena. He also became involved in investigating the strange case of Jeff the Talking Mongoose. Unlike Harry Price, who approached the case as a paranormal investigator, Fodor examined Jeff from a psychoanalytical perspective, blending skepticism with a search for psychological and sociological explanations. Now, here's an account of Fodor's involvement and his interpretation of the Jeff phenomenon. So, in the mid-1930s, Fodor had already gained a reputation for investigating hauntings and poltergeist phenomena. He was intrigued by cases where psychological factors seemed to play a significant role in unexplained events. The story of Jeff reached Fodor through the reports in the press and the growing interest in the Irving's tale among the paranormal community. His approach was methodical, though. He sought not only to understand the phenomenon itself, but to also analyze the family dynamics and psychological underpinnings that might have given rise to the talking mongoose. In 1937, Fodor visited the Isle of Man and spent time with the Irving family at their farmhouse, Dorlish Cashin. So while he did not witness Jeff directly, his experience with the family left a strong impression. He conducted interviews with James, Margaret, and Voirrey Irving, meticulously documenting their accounts and behavior. Fodor noted that the family seemed sincere and did not appear to be outright hoaxers. James Irving, a retired traveling salesman, struck him as an articulate and honest, if somewhat obsessive, about the phenomenon. Margaret was quieter, but she corroborated her husband's claims. Voirrey, the youngest member of the family and often described as shy, seemed uneasy with the attention and avoided speaking at length about Jeff. Fodor's investigation led him to propose several interrelated theories about Jeff, emphasizing psychological and emotional factors rather than supernatural explanations. He suggested that Jeff might represent a type of poltergeist phenomenon, where pent-up emotions or psychological stress manifest as physical or auditory phenomena. He theorized that the isolated and lonely environment of the Irving's farmhouse, combined with unresolved family tensions, might have created the condition for such an occurrence. He particularly focused on Voirrey, whom he believed might have unconsciously, quote-unquote, projected Jeff through ventriloquism or other means. So he was on the ventriloquism wagon, the same that the other guy was. You know what I'm saying? And in his view, the phenomenon could be externalization of her inner thoughts or desires influenced by the family's isolation and her position as a teenager seeking attention or release. Like teenage angst or like teenage rebellion, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But, like, that honestly sounds a lot like the, the people who are all like, oh, it's just the daughter during, like, the Bell Witch haunting.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Oh, no. Blame it on the kids.
Yep.
Another one was he agreed with the role of isolation. The remote location of the Dorlish Cashin contributed significantly to the family's experience. Fodor observed that the farmhouse's isolation likely amplified mundane noises and encouraged the family to ascribe to supernatural meanings to ordinary occurrences. This, combined with the monotony of rural life, could have led to shared psychosis or folie à trois
So, like, not a mass hysteria, but like a shared delusion.
Kind of. That's kind of what I was getting out of that one.
Yeah.
Well, he also thought that Jeff was a symbol of escapism. Fodor was fascinated by the complexity of Jeff's persona, and Jeff described himself alternately as an animal, a spirit, a clever trickster, blending humor with eerie insight. Fodor speculated that Jeff might represent a coping mechanism for the family, or a way to introduce excitement and mystery into their otherwise mundane lives. But here's what happened with Fodor's interactions with Jeff, or lack thereof. During his visit, Fodor did not experience any direct communication with Jeff. The mongoose remained elusive, speaking only when no outsiders were present. Fodor was struck by the precision with which the phenomenon seemed to, quote-unquote, hide from scrutiny, which he felt lent credence to the idea that Jeff might be an unconscious creation of the family, particularly Voirrey. James Irving assured Fodor that Jeff's voice often emanated from within the walls or from hidden spaces in the farmhouse, making it impossible to catch him in the act. Fodor noted this detail but remained skeptical, suspecting that the voice could be produced by ventriloquism or clever acoustics. Fodor's final interpretation of the Jeff case blended psychoanalysis with skepticism. In his writings and lecture, he emphasized that the case was a fascinating study of human psychology and the power of belief. He proposed that Jeff might not be a deliberate hoax, but rather an unconscious manifestation of the family's emotional and psychological state. Jeff is not merely a talking mongoose, Fodor wrote in his notes, but a symbol, a creation born out of isolation, imagination, and the human need for connection and meaning. Unlike Harry Price, who left the case open-ended, Fodor leaned heavily towards psychological explanations. He viewed Jeff as a remarkable example of how the mind could externalize inner conflicts and emotions, creating phenomena that appeared supernatural to those involved. Fodor's work on the Jeff talking mongoose became an important case study for exploration of poltergeists and psychological phenomena. While his theories did not resolve the mystery of Jeff, they provided a new lens through which to examine the case. One that emphasized the complexity of human psychology over the supernatural. But in later years, Fodor reflected on Jeff as one of the most curious cases that he had ever encountered. Whether viewed as a hoax, a spirit, or a psychological projection, the tale of Jeff remained an enduring enigma for him. And Fodor's analysis continues to influence how, such phenomena are studied and interpreted. Now, along with those two visitors, there are even journalists and writers and people that are just curious that come and visit the farm, such as Lambert, who was sent to investigate. I mean, some of them claim to hear Jeff's voice while others were left unconvinced. I remember one stating that they were inside the house and Jeff peed through a hole in the wall on the journalist or the investigator because he got mad at him. And another one, he was like, I don't like you, so I'm going to throw rocks at the window. And so he started literally throwing rocks through a hole in the wall and hitting the window. And of course, Margaret was like, no, we don't want the window to break. You might want to stop. And so he listened to her and he quit doing it. And so many people would hear scratching and moving around in the walls. And they would hear singing, and at one point, he was even speaking in different languages. like Spanish and Hebrew and Yiddish. He would sing like Spanish folk songs. And one weird fact was like his favorite song was Carolina Blue, that like he would sing along with the songs that were played on the gramophone and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought was weird, but okay. How his song Carolina Blue would be his favorite is like beyond me. But with that, word of Jeff, spread quickly beyond the isolated farmhouse, and journalists, skeptics, and the paranormal investigators traveled to Dorlish Cashin, hoping to witness the talking mongoose for themselves. Harry Price was the renowned investigator. He corresponded with the Irvings and later visited the Isle to study the case. So he finally made it instead of just having a liaison go. So he finally got to make it years later. Though he never encountered Jeff directly, but he found the family sincere, eccentric, if anything. One journalist who claimed to have heard Jeff's voice described it as an uncanny, high-pitched chattering, like no animal or human he's ever heard. Others were less convinced, suggesting that Voirie was indeed a ventriloquist and had a very bright talent, if it really was her, and might have been behind the phenomenon. But Voirie adamantly denied this, stating, "I couldn't make up something like Jeff if I tried." But with Voirie and Jeff and the family, came a very peculiar friendship. Now, Jeff's behavior grew increasingly unpredictable. Some days he would sulk in silence, refusing to answer when called. On others, he would chatter incessantly, delivering a mix of insults and compliments. Oh, I remember one time somebody on the podcast I listened to get some information.
Mm-hmm.
He, how he sang songs and stuff. He even sang a very raunchy version of Home on the Range.
Oh.
I want to know what that raunchy version was.
I'm sure we could find
Bone on the range. I doubt that's what it was, but that's what came to mind. But yeah, he would come up with raunchy insults and compliments and stuff like that. But James once asked him why he was so temperamental one day, and Jeff replied, "I'm a freak. I have hands and I have feet. If you saw me, you'd faint. You'd be petrified, mummified, turned into stone." Despite his strange temperament, the Irvings grew fond of their little spectral guest. And they even claimed that Jeff brought them small gifts, such as wildflowers or trinkets that he found out in the countryside. But like all good things, it had to come to an end eventually. In 1937, financial difficulties forced the Irvings to leave Dorlish Cashin. As they packed their belongings, Voirie reportedly asked Jeff, "Will you come with us?" But the mongoose replied, "No, I belong here." The family moved away, and Jeff was never heard from again. The farmhouse fell into ruin, and though new residents reported no signs of the talking mongoose, the legend of Jeff lived on. Years later, Voirie Irving gave a rare interview in which she reflected on her family's unusual experience. "There was something there," she said. "I don't know what it was, but it wasn't made up." To this day, the story of Jeff the Talking Mongoose remains a mystery. Was he a spirit, or a hoax, or a psychological phenomenon born of the Irving's isolation? Whatever the truth, Jeff's tale has endured as, one of the strangest ones and most compelling stories of animals in folklore. He was a mischievous mongoose who blurred the line between mundane and extraordinary. I don't know what I would do in that situation if I had a talking animal in my house, because with all the technology and stuff, you'd be able to find some way of figuring out what in the world was in your walls.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. This could be turned into a horror movie real easy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like, what would the twist be? He ends up having rabies, or it's not a ghost at all?
No, so, like, you start hearing the talking mongoose. He's like, my name's Jeff. I'm a talking mongoose. I live in your walls.
Oh, my gosh.
And then, you know, they've got those, like, cameras that are on those really long extenders or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone's like, well, there can't be a talking mongoose in your fucking wall. So they drill a little hole and they stuff it in there. And
then they find a rake, like, crawling on the walls.
What they find is a lot different than what they expected. And from that moment on, it's no longer fun and games with Jeff the mongoose. He's instead terrorizing them because he's like, you shouldn't have seen my real face. And then, like, he's just slowly killing the family.
If you are a movie producer or a writer and you just heard this pitch, don't sell it to anybody. You come talk to us. We will sell you the rights to that movie. It's probably been done, honestly.
Honestly, it probably has. And we just haven't, like, seen it.
Yeah, we need to find it. But do you think that the story of Jeff the Mongoose was real?
I believe that they think they saw something or heard
Oh,
something.
that is so diplomatic.
No, it's not,
that
because,
they
like, back in that
believe.
day, it would have been really easy to fake something.
Yeah.
It would have been.
Like with the Fox sisters and all the fake psychics and yeah.
So.
But if Woiri was like really that shy and didn't want to talk to anybody and was very adamant, it's not me, I'm not doing it. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty good at reading people, so if I were in the same room with her and I had a real conversation with her, I'd probably, you know, I might believe her, but I don't know. I just don't see the reason why these homebodies and people that kept to themselves and they were quiet and secluded would come up with something like that and let it get to as big as it did. You know what I mean?
Why did the young girls from Salem, Massachusetts just decide to start calling people witches?
They had nothing better to do. And plus, they were eating too much mold from the rye bread.
I mean, you can't rule anything like that out, though, with this.
No.
It's the same concept, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to think, but like the farmhouse, I guess I'm just gonna let this one rest for now, and
we'll never know anything about it.
We'll never know. I mean, he just disappeared. But what do you think, Gravediggers? Do you think Jeff the Mongoose was real? Do you think it was fake? Do you think it was a hoax? Do you think it was a ghost? Do you think it was ventriloquism? I mean,
you were rhyming there for a second.
Oh, do you think it was a ghost? Do you think it was a hoax? Do you think it was a trick? Do you think it was this?
Oh my God.
Eminem, hit me up. Anyway, well, I don't have anything else to add unless you do, Jen.
Nope.
All right. Well, until next time, our beloved Gravediggers, we will catch you on the flip side and stay spooky. Bye.
Stay spooky. Bye.
If you like what you heard, please feel free to follow, like, rate, and review Tales from the Graves podcast on your preferred listening platform.
We also would like to know what you think and what topic you suggest we unearth next. Email us at talesfromthegravespod@gmail.com or reach out to us at Tales from the Graves podcast on Instagram.
And if you have Discord, join us in the graveyard. The link is in our bio on our Instagram as well as this listening platform. Thanks again, Gravediggers.
Yeah. God, shut up! Is that better?
It was. Thank you.
God, I hate you. Okay, anyway.
The fuck was that?
Shut up. I'm going to have to edit so much of this shit out.